So before I begin, first and foremost, I just wanted to say thank you. A lot of large organizations or conferences like this are sometimes hard-pressed to include the youth voice, so I just wanted to take a second and thank LOHAS, thank TED for having me here today, and thank all of you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say. So, with the way the world is changing right now, I am in a very, very interesting space, and for primarily two reasons. The first is that I'm an American living in Shanghai, China, so I've been there for about 2 years now. And the second is that I'm sort of smack dab in the middle of the millennial generation. So really, I'm in one of the fastest developing and changing places on Earth, during one of the most exciting historical times amongst what I believe to be the generation with the most potential for greatness, inheriting the most responsibility that any generation before it has had to. While living in China, I've sort of been forced into this absolute observation just because of the sheer pace that everything evolves. And one of the things that's really hit home is this sort of intense rivalry or competition between the USA and China. The other thing that I've realized is that not just in China, but sort of all over the world, millennials and businesses alike have really this sort of love-hate relationship with sustainability. Like I said, so while I've been living this sort of glorious, glamorous high school lifestyle, I've had time to marinate in my thoughts, and I've come up with really two main hypotheses. The first is that the USA-China sustainability race is really irrelevant looking at the larger picture. And the second is that the only real way to ensure sustainability or the hope for a sustainable future is to build and maintain a large, conscious and informed millennial consumer base for the sustainability market. After I go through my two hypotheses, I'll talk to you guys a little bit about what gives me hope for a sustainable future and the silver linings that I have. So, like I said before, the sustainability race between China and the US is really irrelevant, detrimental to a point. But before I go into that, I really just want to take a second and define and explain what I mean when I say the sustainability race. As you guys probably know and can see, this is a diagram from the New Yorker earlier this year. China and the US have sort of locked themselves in this competition, and on many different fronts. So you have things like global branding, military strength, social media, even Olympic gold medals. So I actually remember this very vividly during the last games. I actually did not think I'd get out of the country alive supporting the US. Is that crazy? So of these competitions, I think, really the most intense and the largest is in the sustainability space. This particular article is from the New York Times, and it's only one of hundreds that's discussing this sort of push and pull situation between USA and China in the sustainability space over the past decade or decade and a half. The way I see it, the sustainability race is really split into two main parts. The first is sustainable energy, sort of the quest for energy independence with renewable energies. And here China's clearly in the lead. This last year, the US invested a meager $1 billion in renewable energy research, while China has committed $80 billion in the next year, and over the duration of the next decade, they plan to spend $800 billion in renewable energy resource. In 2010, China's spending on their wind industry represented nearly half of all funds invested in new wind projects around the world. And since then, they've stayed leaders in renewable energy. The second part of the sustainability race is a sustainable economy. Both countries are really vying for that top dog spot with the largest sustaining economy. And here I think the USA has the upper hand, and I'll tell you why. So China, as you guys probably know, over the past decade or two, have seen this like stupendous growth, economic growth, economic boom. And the reason they've had this, or the reason they've been able to sustain this growth is because they have the workforce to do it, especially with the manufacturing economy that they've cultivated. But because of the one-child policy in 10, 15, 20 years, I think that they won't have the workforce, the sheer numbers, to sustain the type of economic growth that they're looking for. So really the only option they have is to switch to the knowledge economy that the US has right now. But I think that's pretty improbable, considering, every day I go to the fake market and, just I buy Ray-Bans or Vans, or Nikes at like 10% of what the real ones cost. And it just, the amount of intellectual property theft makes the scenario of a knowledge economy in the next decade or two pretty improbable. So with any race, the race to the moon with the Soviets, or the nuclear arms race also with the Soviets, you see technological advances and innovation, in this case, specifically with green tech. So we have, the Three Gorges Dam, hydroelectricity. You have these massive wind and solar farms that are being built in the past few years. MIT is doing some amazing work with energy transportation and storage, which is probably the single largest issue facing our world today. But in the long run, the sustainability race is irrelevant and, like I said, detrimental to a point. And the reason I say detrimental is because it's really exclusive. Everyone's, it's always sort of USA, China, everyone's focusing all their time, all their energy on this race, which leaves a lot of other countries on the outside. And we need to remember that, this issue of sustainability, it's a global problem. It's a problem of humanity. We need to be inclusive. And the reason I say it's irrelevant is, let's be honest, in like 50 years, if we achieve that 98 or 99% sustainability, or if we perish because we failed to do so, no one's really going to care who won or lost. So I think I've made it pretty clear. I think that, the race really isn't a concrete way to ensure our sustainable future. And I think, our best bet at a guarantee is creating that informed and conscious millennial consumer base for the sustainability market today. And the reason I say that is because, once you have that consumer base, the millennial generation they already are inheriting this world and its leadership. But as they continue to do that, we can be sure and we can be confident that they have the focus and they have the drive to work towards that sustainable future that we deserve and so desperately need. So I mentioned before, right, everyone sort of has this love-hate relationship with sustainability. And in businesses, I think it's because it's sort of this buzzword, sustainability. All corporations want to be sustainable. But sustainable right now isn't always profitable. In this room, you have the outliers, the exceptions, the extraordinaires, but really, if Shell wants to be sustainable, right, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, because if they want to embrace the notion of sustainability as it is today, it's very much stuck in environmentalism. It's very much stuck in preserving an ecological balance. And the reason I say millennials sort of have this love-hate relationship with sustainability is because it's kind of a turnoff at this point. So a lot of millennials sort of think of sustainability and say, oh, they're just all tree huggers. I'm fine with being a tree hugger. I like being a tree hugger, but I can't exactly represent my entire generation in that regard. So what I think needs to happen is we need to sort of redefine sustainability, reinvent it. We need to make it sexy again. So I look at sustainability, and contrary to what's sort of portrayed at the moment, I see it as a culmination or the convergence of a lot of these big global issues that we're facing today. So conflict, resource depletion, economic disparity, partisanship, plastic pollution, energy, energy independence, all of these things culminate to create unsustainability. And the problem is that right now they're sort of being tackled separately. They're tackled on an isolated basis. In my mind, I see sustainability more like this, connected, multidimensional. And what this does, right, is it really creates a new face of sustainability where millennials can identify or associate with sustainability, but they can connect with one dimension that they're particularly passionate with. Businesses can say they can work towards a sustainable future, but they don't need to be compromising their profit margins, right? So it gives everybody the ability to work towards sustainability, to associate with sustainability. And it broadens, the millennial consumer base, because all of a sudden they're saying, if I'm sustainable, I don't need to be a tree hugger. I can believe in sustainability and not be, and not always be worried about preserving this ecological balance. So in this, I've sort of coined my own definition for sustainability, which is sustainability is a global state of existence of minimal conflict, environmental stability, open-minded societies, and overall good governance that operates in closed-loop cycles, maintaining and improving upon itself simultaneously. So, another, beyond sort of redefining and reinventing sustainability, I think a lot of businesses, especially, in the sustainability sector and in general, are missing a very core part of building that millennial consumer base, which is basic connection. So I did a bit of, green tech startup consulting, and Green knew it. I had the pleasure of working with them, and what they're doing is they're going into schools, they're educating youth on what smart energy consumption is, and they're building that informed and conscious millennial consumer base, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Uncharted Play, I actually had them in the presentation before I knew they were going to be here, and I think they're doing absolutely fantastic work. They're sort of, identifying or appealing to our very core of play and fun, and on top of that, they're offering this amazing, cool, sustainable product that a lot of us can relate to. Tom's, I'm sure you guys have heard of. They probably have the largest millennial consumer base just because of their message of mutual benefit, of social impact, of sustainability, especially, even if you take their products, the way they make their shoes, the materials that they use, it's all eco-friendly, it's all sustainable. So in all this, it's sort of important to remember that we have a deadline. A lot of these issues that I talked about that are sort of converging to create sustainability, they're nearing their tipping points. So climate change, plastic pollution, conflict. And we need to remember that there's a very clear time frame on this. We need to act fast. We needed to be acting like yesterday, basically. And in the face of all this negativity, right, it's really hard to become discouraged. And for me, what gives me hope and what are my silver linings are the amazing things that my generation is doing in terms of the different dimensions of sustainability. So I just wanted to go through and highlight a few. This is a project that I actually started. I got together with a few friends. It's an online publication called Peace Perspectives that combats media bias in conflict regions by reporting all key relevant perspectives of a current news development in conflict regions. So we have over 70 reporters, correspondents, aged 15 to 20, in 8 different countries reporting on 3 different conflict zones. The second is the work of Boyan Slat. He proposed the Ocean Cleanup Array. I'm sure some of you guys are familiar with his work. The Ocean Cleanup Array is estimated to remove 7 million tons of plastic from the ocean. This isn't just a great step against fighting plastic pollution, it's also a great step towards sustainability. The third millennial I want to highlight is Taylor Wilson. He's basically awesome. He's good at everything. And he's dabbled in everything from like cancer research to radiation detection. And what I think is probably his most profound work in sustainability is nuclear fission. So he's proposed a nuclear fission reactor that's gonna get us leaps and bounds in the right direction towards global energy independence. So if there are three things that I really want you guys to walk away from this today with, is first, I know business is about competition, and I recognize that. And it's probably a bit naive of me to say this, but really embrace the competition to be globally inclusive. So this is a problem of humanity. Forget the race, whether it be national, whether it be corporate, and be globally inclusive. The second thing I would tell you is to redefine and reinvent sustainability so that millennials, so you can garner that millennial audience and make it feasible to grow that millennial consumer base. The third thing I really want you guys to walk away from this with is recognize millennials. Make the effort and build the consumer base. Connect with millennials in whatever dimension of sustainability you can or want to, without obviously compromising your profit margins, but also working towards that end state of sustainability that we so desperately need at such a desperate time. Thank you.